There's something about this case that I just can't stop thinking about. Not because it's one of the most brutal murders Kenya has seen this year, but because of one phone call. Imagine this. Your daughter hasn't answered her phone. Hours turn into a day. A day turns into 2. Then her boyfriend calls. He tells you she disappeared. Naturally, you panic. Together, you head to the police station to report her missing, except before officers can even finish asking him basic questions, he quietly walks out. He doesn't come back. No one sees him again. And here's the part that makes this story even harder to understand. That same day, police discover a sack abandoned in a quiet neighborhood in Nyeri. Inside is a mutilated body of a young woman. By the time detectives connect the dots, the man who had reported her missing has vanished. No arrest, no explanation, just gone. So what happened inside that small one-bedroom house? Why did investigators believe the crime scene wasn't where the body was found? And why, weeks later, was Joy's family still searching for parts of her remains? This is the story of Joy Kanini.
Twisted tales in every folder. Truth runs hot while the trail gets colder. Crime dopers, we don't look away.
This is a case of a murder most fall. The way and manner in which the deceased was killed is unfathomable. She was decapitated from the head, the arms, as well as the lower limbs. Currently, as we speak, the lower limbs were able to be traced, and the missing parts of the body is the head, the neck, as well as the arm.
Welcome back to Crime Dopers, where crime meets truth. I'm Onja. If you're new here, thank you for joining us. Here we don't just tell crime stories, we look beyond the headlines, beyond the rumors, beyond the social media post, because every victim deserves more than becoming tomorrow's forgotten trend. Before we continue, I should let you know that today's episode discusses femicide and contains description of violence that some listeners may find disturbing. Listener discretion is advised. Now, this case shook Kenya, not only because of how horrific it was, but because almost every new development raised another question. A missing woman, a boyfriend whose behavior immediately caught investigators' attention, a crime scene that appeared carefully cleaned, body parts recovered days apart, a suspect who seemingly disappeared into thin air, and a grieving father forced to search not just for justice, but for his daughter's remains. Even now, some questions remain unanswered. Every true crime story starts the same way. Someone loses their identity, not literally, but publicly. They are no longer introduced by their name. They are called the victim, the deceased, the body. And that's unfair because before any of that, there was a life. Joy Kanini was 25 years old, an entrepreneur, a graduate of Nyeri National Polytechnic. She sold shoes for a living. Maybe not the career she imagined as a little girl, but she was proud of it. She worked. She earned her own money. She was building something. Like many young Kenyans, Joy wasn't waiting for opportunities to just magically appear. She created her own. Friends remember someone who was hardworking. Family remember a daughter who stayed connected. Someone who still checked in. Someone whose absence will immediately be noticed. That's important because investigators often begin with one simple question. Was this person acting out of character? In Joy's case, the answer appeared to be yes. When she suddenly stopped communicating, people close to her knew that something wasn't right. Joy was in a relationship with a man named John Muryoki. To some people, he was simply John. Others knew him by nicknames like Tizo. Neighbors saw them together regularly. Nothing about the relationship appeared unusual. There were no public confrontations, no dramatic scenes, no neighbors reporting constant fights. If anything, they looked like countless other young couples trying to make life work. And that's one of the reasons this case shocked so many people, because sometimes danger doesn't announce itself, no. It doesn't always sound like shouting through apartment walls. Sometimes it hides behind ordinary routines, shared meals, shared plans, shared homes. Looking back, investigators will examine the dynamics of their relationship closely. They explored whether financial dependence and relationship tensions may have been contributing factors, although no official motive had been established publicly. It's an important distinction. Investigators follow evidence, not assumptions. At this point, they were gathering facts, not conclusions. Then came Monday, June 8th. At the time, it seemed completely ordinary. Witnesses will later tell investigators they saw Joy outside John's rented house in Gangariti estate. She was washing clothes. That's it. No one reported hearing screams, no one reported seeing a fight. Nothing appeared out of place. And that's what makes this so chilling, because while neighbors went about their day, while people walked past that house without giving it a second thought, investigators now believe those were the final hours of Joy Kanini's life. Nobody knew it then, nobody could have. But within 72 hours, an entire community will be asking one question. How did an ordinary Monday become one of Nyeri's most horrifying murder investigations? Coming up, a phone call that changes everything. A boyfriend says Joy had disappeared, but before detectives can verify his story, he disappears too. And that's where this investigation takes a turn no one saw coming. It's often said that investigations don't begin with evidence, they begin with behavior, how people react, what they say, what they don't say. And in Joy Kanini's case, investigators will later look very closely at one conversation. It was Thursday, June 11th, 2026. Joy had been unreachable. Calls weren't going through. Messages weren't being answered. For her family, that wasn't normal. Then John Muri called Joy's father. According to the family, he said Joy had been missing for 2 days. Imagine receiving that call. Your daughter is missing. The last person believed to have seen her alive is telling you he has no idea where she is. You don't stop to question everything, you just want to find your child. So Joy's father and John headed to the police station together.
Huyu kijana alikuwa na simu ya Joy na ilikuwa na haikuwa na SIM card. Alisema ati Joy alitoa akaenda nazo. Alianza kusema mama ananiita, mama ananisubua, kwa nini nafanya nini hapa? Kazi yangu nimemaliza. Nikamwambia we have to get to this. Joy is my daughter. Lazima kwanza tusettle na police. Be patient. Finally alipotoka huyo alimfuata na mimi nikamfuata nyuma. Akitoka alikuta alikimbia akaenda.
At that moment, this was still being treated as a missing persons case. No one knew the horror that was about to unfold. Police officers began asking the questions they ask in every missing persons investigation. When did you last see her? What was she wearing? Did she mention where she was going? Did anything unusual happen between the two of you? Routine questions. Nothing out of the ordinary. But investigators will later note something unusual. Before officers could complete the interview, John walked out of the station. He didn't tell officers he was leaving. He didn't wait. He simply disappeared. And from that moment, detectives were no longer looking for one missing person. They were looking for two. Now ask yourself this. If the person you love has disappeared, wouldn't you stay? Wouldn't you want updates? Wouldn't you be desperate to help investigators? Of course, people respond to stress differently. There's no single correct way to behave during a crisis. But when investigators notice unexpected behavior, they don't ignore it. They document it. Because sometimes behavior becomes evidence. While that interview was unfolding, another call came in. Residents in Gangariti estate had found something disturbing. A large sack, abandoned, At first glance, it could have been anything: garbage, construction waste, discarded belongings, but as people got closer, they realized something wasn't right. Police responded immediately. The area was secured. Then officers opened the sack. Inside was the mutilated body of a young woman. Even seasoned investigators were confronted with a scene that was difficult to process. The victim had been decapitated. Her head was missing. Her neck was missing. Both arms were missing. For a few moments, she had no name, just another unidentified victim. But detectives already suspected that wouldn't last long. There's something every parent fears: the phone call that changes everything. For Joy's father, hope and fear collided. Could this really be his daughter? Or was there still a chance she was alive somewhere? As investigators worked to establish the victim's identity, that fragile hope disappeared. The body found inside the sack belonged to Joy Kanini. Just hours earlier, her family believed they were searching for a missing woman. Now, they were planning a funeral, or so they thought, because they had no idea this nightmare was only beginning.
Crime dopers.
Now, one thing immediately bothered investigators. The location where Joy's body was discovered didn't look like the place where she had been killed. Crime scenes leave traces: blood, signs of struggle, broken objects, transferred evidence. But here, those signs were limited. To detectives, this looked like a dumping site, not the primary crime scene. That distinction matters because if Joy had been killed somewhere else, then whoever was responsible had transported her body. That takes time, planning, opportunity, and perhaps most importantly, a location where the murder could have happened unnoticed. Investigators didn't have to look far. There was one place they kept coming back to: the last confirmed location where Joy had been seen alive, a one-bedroom rental house in Gangariti estate, the house belonging to John Muri. From the outside, there wasn't nothing remarkable about it, just another rental in a busy estate. Neighbors walked past it every day. Children played nearby. People came home from work. Life continued as normal. It's unsettling to think that some of the darkest crimes happen in places that look completely ordinary. A house you've passed 100 times, a door you've never noticed, a window that never seemed suspicious. Detectives obtained access to the house. Forensic officers suited up. Gloves, evidence bags, cameras, every movement documented, because once investigators entered, they knew they had one chance to preserve whatever the house was trying to tell them. And what they reportedly found changed the entire direction of the investigation. Every homicide investigation reaches a moment where isolated facts begin connecting. Joy's last confirmed location, John's unexplained departure from the police station, the body discovered only a short distance away. Now detectives were standing inside the very house where they believed the answers might be hiding. What they would recover over the next several days would paint an increasingly disturbing picture. But there was one problem. The person they needed to question most was nowhere to be found. And while detectives searched the house, John Muri was already several steps ahead, or at least he thought he was. Coming up, DCI investigators begin collecting forensic evidence: blood-stained bedding, a saw, hidden body parts, and one discovery inside a pit latrine that will leave an entire community in shock. Because this wasn't simply a murder investigation anymore. No, it had become a race to uncover every piece of the truth before the person at the center of it disappeared for good. Every detective knows one thing: people lie. crime scenes don't. A crime scene doesn't care about alibis. It doesn't care about excuses. If investigators know how to read it, it tells its own story. And in this case, that story was beginning to emerge from a modest one-bedroom house in Gangariti estate, the same house where Joy Kanini had last been seen alive. Picture the scene. Police tape surrounds the compound. Curious neighbors gather at a distance, some whispering, some filming, others simply staring. No one quite understands what's happening, but everyone knows something terrible has occurred. Inside the house, forensic officers move carefully, photographs first, then measurements. Every room is documented before a single item is touched. This isn't television. Investigators can't afford mistakes. One contaminated fingerprint, one misplaced shoe print, one overlooked stain could mean losing evidence forever. According to investigators, officers recovered blood-stained beddings and other items believed to be significant to the investigation. A saw was also reportedly seized from the house as forensic examinations continued. That discovery raised an immediate question. If Joy had simply disappeared, why was there blood inside the home? Investigators don't begin with conclusions, they begin with evidence. Each item recovered is sent for forensic examination. Blood samples, fibers, fingerprints, DNAs. Every piece has to be tested before detectives can determine exactly what happened. Around the same time, pathologists were conducting Joy's post-mortem examination. Their findings will become one of the most important pieces of the investigation. The report concluded that Joy died from excessive bleeding. That finding changed the timeline. It suggested that the fatal injuries occurred before her body was dismembered. That distinction matters because it helps investigators reconstruct the sequence of events, not just what happened, but when. As devastating as the discovery of Joy's body had been, detectives believed there was more. Something still wasn't adding up. The condition in which the body had been found suggested not all of Joy's remains had been recovered, so investigators expanded their search, not just around the estate, but within the compound itself. One area quickly drew attention: a pit latrine. It's the kind of place investigators never want to search, but often have to. Search teams worked carefully. Firefighters assisted. Excavation equipment was brought in. Hours passed. Residents watched in silence. Then, another heartbreaking discovery. Detectives recovered additional body parts wrapped inside black polythene bags from the pit latrine. The atmosphere changed instantly. Officers became quieter. Onlookers looked away. Some people cried. Others simply stood frozen, because what had started as a missing persons report had now become one of the most disturbing homicide investigations Nyeri had seen in years. You'd think that after recovering those remains, the family could finally begin preparing for a funeral, but they couldn't. Not yet. Some of Joy's remains, including her head and neck, had still not been recovered. It's difficult to even imagine that kind of grief. Most families are given the chance to say goodbye, to lay their loved one to rest, to begin healing. Joy's family couldn't, because every day brought the same question: have they found the rest of her? Imagine living without uncertainty. Every phone call from investigators, every update on the evening news, every rumor circulating online, holding on to hope, while fearing what might be discovered next. As news spread, something remarkable happened. Residents didn't simply watch from the sidelines. Many joined search efforts around bushes and open spaces near Gangariti estate, hoping they might help investigators recover anything that could bring answers to Joy's family. It wasn't about curiosity anymore, it was about dignity. Because regardless of who Joy was, everyone deserves to be laid to rest with respect. That collective response said something about the community. People weren't willing to let this become just another headline. They wanted answers too. By this stage, detectives had begun assembling a clearer picture. Here's what they believed they knew. Joy was last seen alive at John's house. Days later, her body was discovered less than a kilometer away. Evidence was reportedly recovered inside the house. Additional remains were recovered from a pit latrine linked to the same property. Meanwhile, the man detectives wanted to question most had vanished. Each discovery narrowed the investigation. Each piece of evidence pointed detectives back to the same place and the same person. But despite everything investigators had uncovered, John Muryoki remained missing. Then, just when it seemed he had disappeared completely, he resurfaced. Not in person, no, not in a police station, not through a lawyer, but somewhere far less expected. Online. Coming up, the investigation takes another unexpected turn. Detectives trace a digital footprint. A Facebook post appears. Phone activity suddenly stops. SIM cards are reportedly discarded, and investigators begin asking a question that still echoes through this case. Was the suspect trying to mourn publicly while staying one step ahead of the police searching for him? For detectives, the investigation had become a race against time. The forensic team was processing evidence. Witnesses were being interviewed. Joy's family was preparing for the unimaginable. But the person investigators believed could answer the most important questions was gone. John Muryoki had vanished. No one knew where he had gone. No one knew if he was still in Nyeri or if he had already left the county. What detectives did know was that fugitives often leave behind something they don't realize: a digital trail. Today, disappearing isn't as easy as it once was. Even when someone switches off their phone, there are still bank transactions, security cameras, phone records, internet logins, social media activity. Every click can become evidence. As detectives worked to track John's movements, information emerged that he had briefly logged into Facebook after Joy's death. Not to surrender, not to contact investigators, but to post a message mourning Joy. Then just as quickly, he disappeared from the platform again. That revelation stunned many people. Think about it. A young woman has been brutally murdered. Police are looking for the last person known to have been with her, and that person appears online to publicly grieve. Now, it's important to be careful here. A social media post by itself does not establish guilt, but investigators don't look at one action in isolation. They examine how it fits into the broader timeline. And in this case, the timing raised obvious questions. Detectives then turned their attention to John's phone activity. According to investigators, after leaving the police station, he reportedly changed or discarded his SIM cards, making it far more difficult to trace his movements electronically. That forced detectives to change strategy. Instead of relying solely on technology, they began relying heavily on people: friends, neighbors, relatives, informants, anyone who might know where he had gone, because every fugitive eventually needs something: food, money, shelter, transportation. Very few people can disappear completely without help. Soon, John's name and photograph were circulating widely. News stations carried the story. Social media users shared his image thousands of times. Residents in Nyeri and neighboring counties were urged to remain vigilant and report credible information to investigators. The Directorate of Criminal Investigations intensified the search. Every lead had to be followed. Every reported sighting had to be investigated. Some tips led nowhere. Others consumed valuable hours. That's one of the challenges investigators face in high-profile cases. Public attention brings information, but it also brings misinformation, rumors, false sightings, speculation. Each one has to be separated from fact. As the investigation continued, the story spread far beyond Nyeri County. It dominated television news. radio discussions, social media timelines, people weren't just talking about Joy. They were talking about something much bigger: femicide, violence against women, the murder of young women whose lives end at the hands of people they know, people they trust. Peaceful demonstrations were held as residents, students, and activists called for justice for Joy and demanded stronger action against gender-based violence. One placard read simply, "Justice for Joy." 2 words, but they carried the weight of an entire family. This is usually the point in a case where people begin asking difficult questions. Were there warning signs? Did anyone know something was wrong? Could this have been prevented? Those questions are understandable, but they're also complicated because hindsight, again, is powerful. When we already know the ending, it's easy to believe the clues were obvious. Most of the time, they aren't. Neighbors later described the couple as quiet. Some even believed they were happy. There had been no public scenes that suggested the relationship would end in tragedy. That doesn't mean there were no problems. It simply means those outside the relationship may never have seen them. And that's an important reminder. Many abusive relationships exist behind closed doors. The public often sees only the version people choose to show. While detectives searched for John, Joy's father found himself carrying a different burden. He wasn't just grieving. He became one of the strongest voices demanding justice. He spoke publicly, appealed for information, asked authorities not to let the investigation lose momentum. Imagine the emotional strength that takes to stand before cameras, answer questions, to relieve your worst nightmare. All because you hope someone watching knows something. Sometimes justice depends on that one person who decides, I need to tell police what I know.
Serikali ina uwezo. Hatutajaribika saa hizi kwa yale ambao tumefanyiwa. Huyo kijana angekuwa ameshikwa. Number 1, alikuwa kwa police station, akatoka. Ya pili, hata saa hizi anaapia kwa hata mitadaoni.
By the end of June 2026, detectives believed they had reconstructed much of what happened, but one critical piece was still missing: the suspect. Without an arrest, many questions remained unanswered. Without an arrest, there could be no trial, no testimony, no opportunity for a court to examine all of the evidence. For Joy's family, justice remained painfully out of reach. There's a phrase we hear a lot in true crime: justice delayed is justice denied. But for families like Joy Kanini's, justice isn't just delayed, it's suspended. It's waking up every morning hoping today is the last day police call with good news. It's watching every news bulletin, checking every headline, waiting for the words, the suspect has been arrested. As of the latest publicly available updates, investigators continued searching for John Muryoki, the man identified as the prime suspect in Joy's murder investigation. Until an arrest is made, the criminal justice process cannot fully move forward. No arraignment, no plea, no trial, no verdict, just waiting. Investigators have pieced together much of what they believed happened, but still there are questions that only one person may be able to answer. What exactly happened inside that one-bedroom house? What sparked the violence? Was it planned, or did an argument escalate into something unimaginable? Those answers matter not because they change what happened, no, nothing ever could, but because every family deserves the truth and every victim deserves accountability. Of everything we've discussed today, there's one detail I haven't been able to shake. Not the crime scene, not the investigation, not even the manhunt. It's Joy's family. Because while detectives searched for a suspect, they were also searching for Joy herself. Imagine planning your daughter's funeral. While praying, investigators recover the rest of her remains. No family should ever have to experience that. No parent should ever wonder whether they'll be able to bury their child with dignity. Even after multiple searches, some of Joy's remains had still not been recovered according to the latest public information. That kind of grief doesn't end after the funeral. It changes you forever. Sometimes, true crime unintentionally turns victims into evidence. We remember the crime and forget the person. So before we end, let's remember Joy. She wasn't the woman in the sack. She wasn't the Nyeri victim. She wasn't simply another statistic. She was 25, an entrepreneur, a daughter, a graduate of Nyeri National Polytechnic, a young woman building her business one customer at a time. She had dreams, goals, plans for the future. There were birthdays she was supposed to celebrate, places she was supposed to visit, people she was supposed to grow old with. Those are the things that were stolen, not just a life, but an entire future. And that's why cases like this deserve to be told with care, because behind every headline, there's an empty seat at someone's dinner table. Joy's murder also forces us to confront a difficult reality. Many women are harmed not by strangers, but by people they know, people they trust, people they once believed loved them. That doesn't mean every relationship is dangerous. It doesn't mean we should live in fear, but it does remind us to take warning signs seriously. Control isn't love. Isolation isn't love. Threats aren't love. Fear isn't love. Real love doesn't require someone to shrink themselves just to keep the peace. And if someone you know tells you they're afraid, don't dismiss it. Listen. Sometimes listening can save a life. Sometimes believing someone is a first step toward helping them. As of this recording, the investigation remains active, with authorities continuing to seek credible information that could help locate the suspect and advance the case. Police have encouraged anyone with relevant information to report it through official investigative channels. If you genuinely know something that could help, don't post it online. Don't speculate. Don't spread rumors. Take that information directly to law enforcement. Investigations are solved by evidence, not by viral post. You know, every week on Crime Dopers, we tell stories that are difficult to hear. Stories filled with heartbreak, loss, and unanswered questions. But if there's one thing these stories have taught me, it's this. Justice doesn't always begin in a courtroom. Sometimes it begins with one witness deciding to speak, one neighbor deciding to report something unusual, one friend refusing to stay silent, one person choosing courage over fear. Maybe that's how this story ends too. Thank you for spending time with me. If today's episode moved you, please consider subscribing to Crime Dopers, leaving a review and sharing this episode with someone else. Not because we want another viral story, but because every additional listener is another person who remembers Joy Kanini's name. And sometimes, keeping a victim's name alive is part of keeping the search for justice alive too. If there's a case you'd like for us to cover, let us know in the comments below. I read every suggestion. Until next time, take care of yourselves, take care of each other, and remember today's Crime Dopers life rule: real love shall never make you fear for your life. I'm Joy, and this has been Crime Dopers, where crime meets truth. Stay safe, stay alert, and I will see you on the next episode.
Crime Dopers. We don't look away.